Good morning, everyone. Microphone check, screen check. Yeah, there we go. Looks like everything's working on all sides here. Fantastic. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully everyone is able to rest up, get ready for the day ahead and all that fun stuff. As always, before we jump on the right side of the screen there, make sure to read through the Live Trade Room morning prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that's inside there. Hang on one second. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So anyway, before we jump on the right side of the screen there, I think I already said it, but make sure to read through that. That way you're on the same page as everyone else. Just a quick note before we jump on in, as always, the YouTube side of things does have between a 5 and 30 second delay, depending on what's going on, where you're logging in from and all that fun stuff. That will definitely impact the timeliness of what I may be talking about at any given moment. Also, just wanted to give a shout out to our latest members that joined in the overnight session this morning, etc. Thank you so much for the support. I'm pumped to have you on the SSFTG family. Make sure to subscribe and like and all that fun stuff. We're trying to reach out to that 2,000 subscriber goal mark, and then we can do a 4-piece giveaway. It's gonna be a really fun one. I'm super excited. So make sure to jump on board for that. If you aren't a member yet, you do have a few different options available to check out. If you're looking to further your trading education, trading career, if you're just looking for a cool group of traders to hang out with in the chat room. Here on YouTube, you can check out the join button below the stream. YouTube family gains access to the extended trading hours session. That usually goes until like 10:30, 11 o'clock, depending on what's going on. But, you know, some days are a little more active. Every member, of course, gains permanent access to the Discord chat server. And, of course, you get the awesome badge next to your name to show your support here on YouTube. To understand our trading approach and what it is that I'm doing here every day in the room, look no further than the Day Trading Academy. Listen, this isn't a little PDF that you're going to finish in an afternoon, all right? We're talking 19 plus hours of course material, study material, homework, reviews, study guides, etc. Lots and lots of stuff, so you best tuck in. And then finally, the big one, the Mac Daddy, the VIPs. VIPs have exclusive permanent access to our non-delayed stream, covering the entire morning session from 9 until whenever we finish up. And what we just found out before we started today, we can also do a little bit of pre-game stuff, which is kind of cool. I like the ability to do that, so we'll see what we can get going on that end too. To ensure that you're on the fastest connection possible, that's the whole idea behind the Zoom stream, and that way you don't miss a beat along the way. Alongside that, VIPs do also have access to our monthly webinars, which we just had this past weekend, private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here for the very first time or you're a seasoned VIP veteran over on the Zoom stream, welcome. Glad to have you trading here alongside with me today, taking a look at these nutso markets of ours and kind of what's going on. I say nutso, although, I mean, to be fair, it was about as predictable as possible, huh? That lined up almost perfectly with what we were looking to do. Well, anyway, we'll see what they can bring to the table. Don't forget to grab your morning DP levels. Those are posted for you there this morning on the Major 7. We've got the NASDAQ, S&P, Gold, Crude, Euro, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. All of those major levels for you there. As far as the news is concerned, the news calendar for this morning is, well, I mean, most of it's already kind of done. We had the initial jobless claims that came out better than expected at 364,000 versus the 390 forecast. Aside from that, everything is looking pretty good. You know, the next announcement that we have is going to be at 10 o'clock, ISM Manufacturing PMI. That forecast is 61. And then after that, well, we really don't have a whole lot to worry about. So as far as things are concerned across the board here, really don't have a whole lot to worry about until 10 o'clock. And then after that, kind of done again. So we'll see what they can bring to the table here, but should be kind of interesting at least. Now, looking across the board, we were talking about last night on Discord how, this is an area on the NASDAQ that is of definitive interest. I've got it all messed up with stuff, but I'll get into it in a second here. We're talking about yesterday at when did I post that? 4:10 p.m. If the market isn't back to the all-time highs tomorrow, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised, myself included. This movement seems like there's going to be some serious pent-up energy on the NASDAQ waiting to pop, but that said, if it does hit the all-time highs, it may be closer to the end of the trend this time around, more sideways, assuming that it doesn't rifle through the top. And, man, that's... Talk about just picking it right out of a hat, huh? Came right up to the highs, tapped the highs, and just retreated straight back down again. Rifled all the way down to the lows. That's very important because really what we want to see here is how is this market responding to this upward momentum? This is obviously extremely bullish to the upside. It hasn't stopped going to the upside, in fact. And a lot of buyers are going to be looking to see, hey, how do they want to get this to continue? We started off with an L4 bounce on the lows, and they continued back up to a new high. The new high then led off to an L1. Got some aggression. We're back to L1. Now we're not pulling back to anything, right? So if anything, all we're really waiting for is just a little bit of a pullback, right? Back to L1. Back really nice to get back to L2. That'd be fantastic. But it's just really, really far up. It's super far up here, and it's got to come back down just a little bit in terms of a value perspective if it wants to find or at least attract more buyers to this party, because this thing is just so far up here. Now, we'll see what they're able to get going when we zoom into the NASDAQ, but in the meantime, let's jump over to the S&P. The S&P does have that top-weighted POC. If we drag this a little bit further forward and include that new high that happened and the dump all the way back down again, we can see that, well, where'd the market come back to? When we see things like this kind of makes me think, hey, this might be the spot that buyers are trying to defend and jump back in again. And it seems like, just throwing it out there, they defended it pretty aggressively. Now, we can use that to our advantage because obviously the S&P has non-stop gone higher. And with this kind of bullish momentum to the upside, it's going to need to find some respite somewhere. It has to pull back at some point to kind of refuel a little bit. There's only so much juice before it just can't. Little engine that could style, I guess, right now. But with this little pop above the highs, and now we're starting to dive back down again, this is where we can kind of measure things up. Where would the market likely want to pull back to? Well, if we go from the top to the bottom and kind of see where was there a balance point before that whole reversal up, this will give us an idea of what to expect, and that POC lands right there. So if the market's going to pull back to anywhere, it's not saying that the bull trend is done. There's nothing saying that the bull trend has to be totally over and this thing's going to get absolutely annihilated. But it would make some halfway decent sense to see a nice little pullback down to the 4230s, 4240s. That would be a valuable pullback for a lot of traders to get something that is sorely being missed right now, which would be a pullback of substance, right? Back to a previous POC, back to something of interest, something a little bit more than an L1, just a little bit further, This is very unsustainable. That doesn't mean that the market has to go crashing down today. In fact, we could be all the way back up to the all-time highs again, just like normal. But it is something that I do want to pay attention to. If we start losing ground underneath this POC, there's a very good chance that we see this dive down a little bit further, and seeing it get down into that zone, it'd make perfect sense. Over on gold, we're back to the POC. And, well, they're hovering. Let's see if anything's changed here. Hey, how's it going? Welcome. We've got some bullish continuation to the upside, and more importantly, we've got that POC, which is hovering at 1778, and the market is breaking above it. That's a good thing, obviously. This market is still kind of creating this candle, so there's still some time, but I mean, all things considered, the buyers are trying to make that attempt up. And that's important because we just saw the sellers try to rotate that down, and that was met with nothing but higher low, higher low, higher low. That's a really strong rejection from the sellers, or the buyers pushing back against the sellers. They're saying, wait a minute, hold on now. Is gold really worth this much now? 1750, huh? That's a big psychological level, right? 1750, 2000, 1500, those 250 moves, 500 moves. Traders love those because it's easy, right? Well, at 1750, lo and behold, at 1750.1, good old Walmart special bounced it right off of that low and pinged it right back up. And now we're all the way back above a POC and racing higher. How many traders do you think got left behind back at 1750? The mom and pop traders who didn't get filled. Now they're going to have to FOMO their way into this because it's probably not going to pull back again. Now, the thing is, a lot of that FOMO starts setting in here. And it could be a spark. Don't get me wrong. This thing could just go screaming to the upside, and that is the anticipation. We were talking about that yesterday, how if they rotate back up, the upside has a lot of potential. But I mean, this could also be the start point of a major trap before we get that next higher low pullback, because we haven't had that yet. And that's something that stands out as being sorely missed at the moment that I would really like to see a pullback for. I don't know that we're going to get that, but a dip back into the 1760s, that could be really, really nice. Crude oil, geez, oh Pete. Crude oil, I mean, we were talking about those longs yesterday. I wasn't necessarily anticipating it going straight up to the moon, but that's sure enough where it went. Wow. We broke above that. We went into the day after, holding support 73.05, 73.05, sellers resistance in the way. They finally got it out of the way, and the only pullback they had was way the heck up there at 74. Not making it easy, that's for sure. So, I mean, when we have a situation like that, a lot of traders are going to be thinking, well, you know, are we going to get a pullback? Don't mind the lawnmower, sorry. Are we going to get a pullback? The next pullback that happens, is it going to be an L3? Is it going to be an L4? What's going on? If we're following this trend along the way, we've got an L3. They rotated up to a new high. It once again pulled back to an L3. They rotated back up to another new high over here. Now we've got L1s. And then we see a follow through that looks like this. I mean, this kind of momentum to the upside is really starting to show that the bulls have something going here. But the concern is that this may be overextension, like it's done too much. So this is kind of a do or die on the L1. I'm not necessarily looking for an L2 because at that point it's too far down. If they're going to go to an L2, they're probably going to rinse and repeat, go back to a 3. The 2 just doesn't hold anything other than maybe being around a previous swing high. That doesn't really do anything, for it. So right now it's going to be hold the L1 or get out of the way for a bigger pullback. We'll see what they want to do. Right now, just as a side note, they are bouncing off of a positive 2 DP. So from a statistical standpoint, it should not close above that with a 96% certainty. Statistically. Now, we know how statistics work, and we know what the market loves doing when you say stuff like that, so I'm just throwing it out there. It shouldn't close above 76 today. Of course, crude oil also shouldn't go to negative 40. Cough, cough. Looking at the euro grinding its way back up again off of those lows. Obviously, they put in a really nice bottom-weighted settlement, and they attempted to go lower, but it failed and rotated back up. This looks like the start of a potential twin reversal that has a bit of a space in between. If you were to look at something like maybe an hourly or even a 4-hour chart, you would see something along those lines where you've got that initial drive down, the market pauses, and now it's attempting to get that drive back to the upside. That's the goal right now. So the euro, along with gold and those, are looking pretty good to try to get a halfway decent bounce off of this base. Now, if we remember, the euro was one that did not have a POC that was set in at the right place. So we have to migrate this forward and see if that's changed. Have they gotten a new POC yet? No, they have not. Still up at 22,135. So no POC shift, no nothing. Still hovering down here. Man, it would be really nice to get that shift down, but they just can't get it. Over on Bitcoin, seeing that value pullback, we are beyond the first value pullback. That was right here. The secondary value is going to be a bit further down. That's the one that I would still really love to see, down to those 31Ks. But again, you know, it's still looming in the back of my mind that we haven't filled 20,000 yet. So, whew, man, if the bulls don't hold this, I still have a lot of concerns. They're not breaking away, obviously, and the last pullback was an L5. If they're going to rinse and repeat, then, you know, maybe an L5, L4 again. The L4 lines up perfectly with the value pullback. So, I mean, those zones, that's where buyers going to be looking to get in. But if it breaks below the bottom, that might cause some trouble. Same goes for Ethereum. Ethereum had a heck of a rally back to the upside. Quick little snap back up, and now they're hovering. That definitely adds a lot of confidence for the Ethereum market. The fact that we didn't break a new low, Bitcoin did. It broke back up above a new high. Now, as far as a confirmed swing, arguable that we didn't break it until, oh, hey, wait a minute, that big rally up did. Now, I know it looks like, oh, what a break. You know, look at all those wicks, hot diggity. I know, the breakout on the top is absolute garbage. I'm not going to deny that in the least. But that is what needed to happen in order to potentially shut down the bear pressure. Because a lot of stops who are short will be hovering above that high. Now, all of those wicks being absorbed, that could easily just be new shorts trying to get them drive back down, etc. We know how this works. But the fact that it shut it down means that it took a lot of people out of the party. So when it starts pulling back, a lot of traders are going to be looking at this shorter term, especially now that we've broken above this high, in the sense of, well, how is this structuring? The last pullback was an L5. Now we've got an L1. We're starting to pull back. This is going to be closer to like an L1. Wait a minute, L2. Nice little dip back. Oh, wait a minute, L3. Oh, wait a minute, L4. You can see how it can get really far back and start securing some of those nice deep pullbacks. But it's okay because of this break on the highs. This all becomes BTFD now. Everybody's looking to buy on the way down on Ethereum. They're just trying to find the best price. Now, obviously here again, if it breaks below the low, then things can get pretty nasty. But I think there's a bigger fall to be waiting for Bitcoin rather than Ethereum. Ethereum, I think, just has more utility. Definitely brings a lot more to the table, that's for sure. Let me get the right chart open here. As far as the Euro session goes to the Asian session, wow, the Asian session was non-existent. The Euro session, well, everybody showed up to the party, and wow, it slammed it right back down again. What a crazy, wild ride. Now, remember, this is what we were talking about, how I would be very surprised if the market doesn't want to rotate back up to a new high and cycle off of that top. And, well, they did in a very nasty way. Now, I'm very curious, how did they float the volume into that move? Because, well, that could create a big zone of interest if we can get some of that volume going in there. And the POC is actually down here. Yikes! Wow, so even after all of that, you can see profit taking up in the highs, but not enough to shift the POC. The POC's down here, notably, right on top of settlement. That's what the market's trying to reject off of. This does seem like a little flag before a continuation up. So, I mean, again, I have a really hard time not wanting to BTFD my way into NASDAQ as well, because, well, every dip is getting bought. But, I mean, as it stands, there are some things that are saying that the sell side is potentially trying to take over, at least. Let's look from the top to the bottom. We've got the POC right in the middle. Yikes. Come on now. If we go from the bottom back up, got the POC at the top. All right. So if the sellers are trying, we can see that they're demonstrating resistance off of the 546s or so. That's where they're going to want to hold. It doesn't mean that they will, but if they start breaking above that, or if we start seeing things change, which we might, 537.75. It seems like buyers are really trying to get something going. My concern is that bigger picture. When we look at the daily, when we look at everything else, that's really showing that that quick little trap on the highs could cause some pretty vicious movement. This is the first time, I will say this, it's the first time that we've broken below a previous day's low. Since, oh man, when? This is the daily chart. Each one of these is dailies. It's the first time we've broken below a low. Nothing, 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 and sell here. So it has literally been an all-time high nonstop perpetual rally or pause rally straight up to the highs. The first pullback that's actually happened. So, I mean, there's part of me that just wants to buy it. Like this is the first time that it's actually dipped below the lows. This would be a great in as far as reduced risk, out of the money's all-time high type option plays at the open, trying to get that continuation pop. We have completed major objectives to the upside. The 2-to-1 off of the swings have hit their objectives. We've hit major objectives in the 14,420s to 460s. If you remember that zone, we've obviously gone above that to 600s. That's fine. That's feasible. That happens very frequently where it goes above these projection areas by about 20 to 30% or so. If you want to look at the fib numbers, then 23.6 or 382. That would be the zone above those highs, generally speaking, that the market's going to want to migrate up to, and it has. Now, as far as it being a pullback or calling the top, obviously it's very early to say that this is the top, but this market could use some decent pullback at the very least, and we are completing some major objectives. We're getting a lot of volume coming in. It's just this is the first time it's broken below a previous bull bar. They're either going to show up to the party with a giant bull engulfing candle, which right now, mind you, it's bear engulfing, or we see this thing just get absolutely obliterated with one of those humongous daily bear bars to the downside, which happens like over here. And usually, those are engulfing candles. That was an engulfing candle. And that started that descent all the way down. The other bear engulfing candle never triggered underneath the lows, so we do have to pay attention to how this all follows through, but we're already breaking underneath the lows. So there's some conditions that are being met here that are slightly concerning for the next few days here on the NASDAQ if the buyers don't maintain some strength. 60-minute doesn't really add a whole lot, but if we go into the 15, this is where we can get a little bit closer to see how is the market responding to the overall movement higher. Jeez, where do we even start? I guess let's start here and see how the market's responding to the story. If we begin here, we've got some inside rotations, but let's get this to pop back up. The high is L4, L3s, L2s. They're climbing the ladder up into L1s, so they are following the rules at least. We've got more L1s back to the upside. They're holding L1s again. They finally finished the objective, and now I've got the L2 test. So you can see, if the bulls are going to take it, they need to do it now. This is their shot. They need to take it sooner than later. But if they start breaking through the lows, man, I just don't see a whole lot until we get down to L3s, and that's in the 14,460s. If we look back from a volume profile standpoint, that's obviously a low all the way up to the top. Technically, we can go over here, but just going back for a second, there is a POC that's lined up at 480s, technically 460s. If we drag this up to the highs, my concern is that we've got a POC shift that we now are rejecting underneath, and that can start a very strong descent to the downside. If we're looking at it from an ABCD corrective phase, let's get some ABCDs on here. That would put it right there. Jeez, right at the bottom of the spike and channel, right? Spike, channel. Where does the market usually like coming back to? The beginning of the spike and channel, the channel point. That's where an ABCD correction down is. That's also on top of the L3. That's also the defense ahead of a giant VVP. So again, the sellers have a real shot here to try to drive this down. But when we start hitting these 440s, the bulls have really one choice. That's their ledge. If they can't hold it, there's some problems. There's some major problems. We'll see what they're able to get going here, but this could get really interesting real quick. Give me 1 second here as we go into the open. All right, we're back. So far, I mean, going into the open here, it really feels like we're on the ledge. This is either going to be a bull flag and a massive, just a rip to the upside. That could go absolutely crazy because, I mean, if that does end up being a V top into a V bottom and we see some of that support come to fruition, the upside on this could be just bonkers. But if they fail, oh man, things get real interesting. Let's see if they want to get any type of action going here. We've got a lot of volatility obviously in play. We are in the first day of the month. Fresh month. Sellers are gaining a bit of strength here on this short term. POC's hovering in the 536s. Still feels like they're kind of on the back foot a little bit here, but 928 is the next big batch of time that we've got to keep our eyes open on. If the sellers are going to take anything, that's the one that they're going to take, that bear bar. The timing is incredibly awkward. Going directly into 928. But we'll see if they take it. I mean, this would be the spot, right? We've got the 3 lower highs, we've got the POC shift, prices underneath it. I mean, it's got everything it needs. The only thing that's against my rules personally, I can't trade it into 928. It's way too erratic. Unfortunately, that means I missed that one. Still really hard to ignore the potential of this being a wedge. Or at least trying to be. I'm curious, doesn't that tool do that too? Just kind of stuck inside that little kind of wedge. We got 1 minute until the open. Let's see what they want to do at the open. The pressure is definitely on for the downside. At this point, I'm not sure if it's too late to ask. What is L1, L2, etc. Yeah. The L1, L2 methodology and the ideology behind it is based on more mathematical structure. It's all explained in the Day Trading Academy under Unit 2, Chapter 8 is when we start getting into it. That covers basically the entire concept of how I approach the markets. Is derived, and it's easier just to call them L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. If you were utilizing fibs, which they're not, but if you were utilizing fibs, it would be very similar to like the 236, the 382, that kind of breakdown of those zones. But it's just more along how we use them. I mean, obviously you can measure any pullback with a random number and it's going to be right, part of the time, just like a moving average is essentially just an average. It's useless because the market will always come back to any average. All of the moving averages we have on the screen right now are the random ones we made 2 years ago. So, I mean, it's kind of the same concept. It's how we use them in order to gauge the strength of a trend or the lack of strength, etc., what to expect next, those types of things. But again, that's all in the academy. Nice bullish continuation back to the upside. Rechallenging the POC is likely going to be the zone of interest that they're going to push off of. If sellers are going to hold this area, that's going to be their spot. Now, if we go back and we look at just that pullback up, the POCs for them on the impulse is down at 505. And then from top down is at 536. Man, it really feels like they're reaching out trying to hold these lows up, but if these bottoms start breaking, there's not going to be a whole lot left. And these bears are putting up some definite fight. Ooh, okay. Bull engulfing candle back up now. Shifting things a little bit. If the bulls are going to take it, that's a halfway decent response for the bulls to try. The obvious issue is that it's above or under the POC. We have broken above it, and it immediately rejects back down. Ugh. Give me a good pulse above this POC so I know that it's not breaking and trapping. Okay, there we go. Now we're getting some juice above the POC that adds a lot of context for the buyers to try to grab some type of pullback with the understanding that we've got at least a bit of continuation. Let's see if they can actually get a pullback. The first 5 minutes is still not done, so we are still in a little bit of a dangerous time. But it's a bit clearer in terms of what they're trying to get done here. Rotation back into the POC would make sense. That's up at the 555s. You've also got the settlement hovering there. Let's see if I can grab a little pullback underneath 47s. Beautiful continuation pop back up. Very nice. That's the only pullback, really, that they're going to allow right now, given the way that this is moving. It's just too aggressive. We've broken too many things to the upside. We haven't had the larger pullback, and I doubt we're going to get it. So it's either enter now for a smaller one and accept the risk, or just miss it. We still had room, so I like it for a quick little dip underneath that last entry. Nice that it decided to close bullish too. That helps. Back to settlement and attempting to churn back up through that. We've got about 1 minute left on this first 5 minute. As far as the POC, usually on the NASDAQ, the POC on the first 5 is incredibly obvious these days. We'll see where they want to plop it, though. 96.75 for the S&P. On the NASDAQ so far, it just shifted it up. 56. Still got a little bit of time, though. Market pulling back a little bit further. There's some obvious support coming in these 550s. I mean, we're hitting some major objectives. So if we're looking at it from the perspective of shorts, I mean, realistically, this is about as perfect of an ABCD wave. A little bit further would be completing the ABCD correction back at 73. So it's got a little bit more to go before the full-on perfect correction is done. Got a quick little snap back up above a new high. I guess we could call that a pullback. We're above settlement. If we're looking at this from an impulse, we can go back over here at 36, or we can just say, you know what, it's probably all part of the same thing. It's still back at 36 anyway. It doesn't really change much. this low down here in the 49s, the 45s, if the bulls are going to try to take it back, this should be the short-term floor. But if it fails here, then we're likely going to get a deeper pullback to that 36. That would be the spot that would make sense at least. Still got a lot of happenings going on here. Just after 9:35, the first 5 minutes done. The S&P POC is at 96.75. For the NASDAQ, it moved 550. What an incredibly awkward spot to put that, huh? If we're looking at the near term on like the 15-minute, you can see just from a structural view, this is obviously not a tick chart. We've got, I mean, this thing just hasn't stopped going up, but we're kind of in a megaphone. Could even kind of break it. I mean, it depends on how you want to break it down, but the most obvious poles would be these. And the market's just kind of bouncing around inside there. The last time around, it was just a bull flag. An F flag, that is. So from a continuation standpoint, I mean, this is where bulls are going to try to take it. They're back above the POC. They've got their shot. See if they can keep it going. Nice bull bars back above settlement. Making it incredibly awkward up here where they're kind of resting. Whoa. All right. Nice bull bar response back up again. Kind of. The bulls came in really aggressively underneath that bear bar, which would potentially suggest that a lot of bears just got trapped there. I'm going to see if I can utilize that for a quick pullback bounce back to the upside for a break above these highs. Challenge the 560s. Looking to see if they can get that continuity to the upside. Nice snap back down again. We've got another bear bar down and possibly another trap going on, which is why I'm holding off on this area. This looks like a nice little spot. Beautiful flush to the downside. Now, if the sellers are going to drive this back down through the lows, having an average closer to the lows would be significantly more beneficial, if possible. Right now, that's not the case, so I've got a little bit of work to do. Back down to the inside of the euro lows, just a little bit more. Right there. There we go. That way we've got the average a little bit closer down to the lows. If they want to dip a little bit lower, we'll still likely have a response back above the 50s anyway. It just creates a significantly more beneficial scenario. Easier to manage. If traders were looking for break even, that might have been it, although they did come one tick away technically. Woo! Howdy ho there. All right, I'll take that. Thank you. Jeez, oh Pete's. Well, I got the snap up into the scalpers move. Jerked right back up. First in, first out would be, the first part of that trade would be a loss, but the other two are still technically wins. So it will impact or reflect in the numbers. But nice little jerk back off the Euro session lows. And that's why I really didn't want to get rid of it. It seemed too obvious. They trapped me up at the top. I'll give them that. And I gave them a little bit of time. If you were looking for that rotation back up, obviously when it would bear, kind of game over. But we know the games that they play at the open. They can try. That's fine. Buyers might even try to rebuy this area, but I think we've been kind of hanging out there for so long where if there's not responsiveness here, we'll likely see another leg down to those 36s. Not to mention that it does fit pretty nicely if they can take just a little more time to get that to land about over here. Just hang on, NASDAQ. Just hold on. Zones of interest across the board here. Crude oil just continues to race to the upside. The S&P's got that bounce off of that POC at 87.25. We know the bulls are giving it a shot. The euro, that's a really nice... From a seller's perspective, I could also see how the sellers might want to try to take this lower. But this is only the first dive. We might have something sooner than later on the euro. That could be interesting. Not quite yet, though. Sellers attempting to... Wow. Sellers attempting to get the continuation to the downside. They've really got to break through these 536s, but we've got all of this really nice-looking support down here. If we include all of this, they have shifted the POC up to the 555s. From the lows, we've got an L4. And they're trying to hold an L1 right now. From the sell side, sellers are still waiting for the 4s back in the 68s. All the way up to the 90s, so. Breaking above the POC. Nice continuation. They're still missing a few things. I mean, we're missing some highs. We did poke above a high, but then it immediately failed down to a new low. So, it would be nice to get some proof. Another strong bear bar off the top, back underneath the POC. They're making it really awkward here. Let's see if they can churn this back up. Another strong bull bar. Kind of watching the time and sales a little bit here as well. Trying to just keeping an eye above this candle's high. Would be at 58. I didn't see any orders hit at 58, did you? I didn't see the time and sales do anything at 58. There's not a soul up there. Nobody showed up to the party. Yikes. Well, I mean, if buyers did take that, that might be a little bit of a red flag. Maybe they're trying to get an extra trap here underneath the POC, but I didn't see anything happen at 58. That was probably one of the most obvious giveaways I've ever seen in my life. If the buyers are going to take it, that's where they're going to do it, and then just crickets. Nothing happened. 9:45 around the corner. Sometimes it bumps around a little bit. Next one's going to be 10 o'clock, though. S&P is breaking above its 5-minute POC. The first candle is the month. Once again, what a shock. Mother candle of the first, second, third, the next 20 candles, who knows. We're still stuck inside the first 5. NASDAQ potentially rejecting off the top-weighted 5-minute POC. I mean, this is the balance board. We're still kind of hovering. They haven't quite made the decision yet. Ooh, that looked like a pretty big decision that just happened there. Wow, that was a lot of orders. Holy crap. That was a lot of orders that bounced off of that. Incredible amount of strength coming in on bar 3 on the S&P as well. Nice candle, but still inside bar 1. something bought market with some size, that's for sure. Yeah, but that's such a minor news at 9:45. Like, with 10 o'clock around the corner, with much bigger news at 10 o'clock, I just... I don't know. Seems more like a gotcha moment, where they tried getting people in, they made it look like a false break, and then just ripped their faces off. Well, either way. We do have continuation back above. They're breaking above the 56s. This is their shot to get this thing continuing. We're now kind of breaking through the teeter-totter. These pullbacks could get a little bit less frequent and a lot more aggressive. There's nothing to hold the market anymore. There's no POCs. There's nothing. See if we can get a bit more of a pullback. Those 56s become a big zone of interest. It's also right on top of settlement. That's not awkward at all. Nice little twin reversal potential there if they close out a strong bull bar looking like that. A lot of orders tapped above that bull bar. Starting to pull back on itself a little bit. There's an argument that buyers are definitely buying this aggressively way up here. It just feels like it's, you know, these little pullbacks. Usually when they're going to go, they'll follow up with a few candles or have something a bit more obvious. I don't think we've had that yet. Yeah, even in the near term, the POC's up at the top. Now, this little push back down towards the POC, a nice weak little close here or something that would allow the bulls to try to push this back up would be fantastic. A second long candle turning right back up to the highs. All right, well, that's one way to do it. They're attempting to get that push back down to that POC, and the short term POC is still up at the top. It's the first time they've been able to actually churn down with a halfway decent bear bar. The response being bullish so far. This would also be a second long off of the top, depending on how it closes, of course. Yikes. What a candle. Okay. Still kind of chopping around a little bit and now breaking through a lot of this support. Kind of feels like the bulls need a little bit of a deeper pullback now. Nice little value pullback based on the last time around would be halfway decent. Get it back into the 530s or so. Whoa, hey there, bull bar. Big giant snap back to the upside, retesting settlement. That candle just showed up out of nowhere. Are we gonna play this game again, NASDAQ, where these candles just appear? Possible twin reversal right back down. Man, they took that whole move back. Jeez. Do you mind showing the POC for gold? I missed it earlier. Yeah, the POC for gold is back. It's so far detached right now because you got to go back to like right at the beginning of June to get it, but it's at 1778 at the moment. That's inclusive of the high all the way back on June 1. Might be a little more obvious on like a 60-minute. Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, you can definitely see they're trying to get that bottom in. But, whew, it's early. Got the NASDAQ attempting to get a rotation back up again. Really nice bullishness and a ton of bullishness coming in. I'm going to take the crack at it towards the higher end of this, but see if I can get a little bit of a snapback to that POC. There we go. Nice little pullback for the buyers to try to crack it back to the upside again. I love this area, especially with these pullbacks to settlement. But if it fails here, the reason why I like this area is because we don't really have to give it a ton of room. But the upside potential would be a break back above towards the 70s and continuing that rally back up to start retesting these major zones. Okay, thanks. Gonna take a long time for it to shift. Big time. Well, and I mean, not even necessarily. You know, it just, in this case, it took forever for the thing to shift gears. That's also kind of a clue. But... starting to break down a little bit further, which means that we are likely going to, especially with these POC shifts, if we get another pushback up and start demonstrating resistance off of another POC, because remember, this is still developing. It doesn't take much to shift the POC while it's still developing. But if we see more responsiveness now that it's had a bit more time to kind of develop in there, then obviously we're in a zone that it's going to make more sense to try to look for a value pullback deeper into those 30s. So at this point, given the upside potential in terms of where you're looking, if you're looking at like a 2-to-1, it's... well, actually, they still have a ton of room. Jeez, oh, Pete. I think from this point, it's fairly obvious that it's failing if you're going to exit early. But I do like this area. And again, I'm willing to accept the risks that the NASDAQ loves to pose. As far as the S&P, we're starting to dip back. The zone of interest on the S&P would be closer to the 96.75s for a retest of that first 5 volume. Below that, 95.75 and 94. There we go. Halfway decent bear bar on the S&P. We might be able to get down to those 96.75s. I didn't get a fill on the extra one down there. I'm going to try to keep it around the 5, but I would like to do some work on my average. My average is obviously in a crap location. But like we've seen today, it just takes one frickin' candle out of nowhere on the NASDAQ. I'm not going to plan on that, though, obviously. I think this still has enough juice in it for one more leg lower. I don't think it makes any sense to add any more risk since I missed that low. On the S&P, 96.75 would be looking for a bounce at least up to 97.75, but potentially back up to the highs. I don't typically hold the S&P for too long, though. Man, I didn't get a... I'm trying to pick up this dip down in value, but every time I try to hit the bid, it just leaves me behind. Speaking of which, there goes the S&P, huh? One tick away. Well, we still got 3.5 minutes left. News around the corner at 10 o'clock will definitely throw things around a little bit. I still think the Nasdaq's got room for another shorter-term leg to the downside, especially if you measure out the first portion of this. It would make a lot of sense for one more attempt. God, let me click the line. There we go. To the downside. So if we do get a jerk back up into the 53s, I'm not... closer to the 57s to 58s. I'll likely reduce a little bit, but I would still like to try to hold for the larger move to the upside. Let's do it like that. That way, that will give me a final one way down here. It'll exit the first ones, which are obviously wrong. And it'll utilize the last one as a potential to the upside if it does just jerk up. I've got to be prepared just in case those stupid candles show up. I still got to know where they're at. That would put the 2 to 1 just a bit further up, actually. Again, I've obviously got some work to do on my average, but looking at the S&P, it swerved me by a tick. It just missed me. If it closes bullish and it kind of leaves me in the dust, there's just nothing. I mean, there's nothing I can really do about that. We've got a minute left. They just hit the top. If they were to rotate all the way back down now, I would rather offset. So I'm going to flex this down just a bit further. 95.75. Be a little bit more on the bear side if they pulled down now. It just make more sense to offset. Still just kind of grinding. Still looks to me like it's got room for another leg to the downside. It's probably going to be equal to the first if it does. Every time I try to click it. Which actually just puts it right back at the bottom again. S&P didn't fill and now backing off a little bit further. The 90s, the area just doesn't make as much sense anymore. I would rather wait for at least the low closes, 94.25. But if it's going to be buying at 94.25, then why not just wait for the settlement retest? And the settlement retest has already been tested, so it doesn't have to act as support. It creates a really awkward situation on the S&P. But we are in 10 o'clock. Let's get those final questions in, and then we'll swap over to the extended session. And here it sits. Market just kind of hovering. Not really doing a whole lot. Again, the NASDAQ still feels poised for one more leg to the downside in terms of the cycle. If it does go up, then fine, I'll reduce the risk a little bit. But I still want to try to hold a bit for a larger rally. And the 2-to-1 objectives are hovering inside this zone. They did get that equal value bounce, huh? All the way down. All right, not seeing anything as far as questions go for the 10 o'clock period, so let's switch over to the extended session, and then we'll rock and roll over there, right? So for this side of things, I hope you had a great morning of trading. There's a nice little bit of volatility here, and finally gave a chance to actually build into something a little bit bigger, although it's being a pain around the break even. People wimping out on me already, huh? Got to see the breakthrough. But that'll do it for this morning. Hopefully you had a great day of trading. If I missed any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, jhb@ssftg.com. I'll get you covered from there. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the day, rest up, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning, all right? For the rest of you, hang out for just a second, listen to me talk to myself, and we'll switch over to the extended session, all right? All right. For the rest of you, have a great one. We'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.